But I think lyrically, it's regressed.
What do you mean?
I mean, as far as the lyrical side of it, I mean, if you take hip hop from the 80s or this golden era, or even in the 90s, and the majority of the MCs that were out there, they were mostly lyrical. Even my first trip I made to the Bronx, one of my first trips to the South Bronx from Staten Island.
Born and raised in the Bronx. Yeah.
I was around 11, and we had 2 MCs in our whole borough of Staten Island. And when I got to the Bronx, a whole bunch of MCs. You know, I have this line where I say, I was born with the mic in my hand, and I took it from Brooklyn to the SI land. I pulled up on the block, got out the truck. It was the first of pit stops, the era of the spinning top, around the birth of hip hop. That was something I had identified with, so I made it my point to exploit this fly gift. And me and the RZA made trips to the BX, a mass of ferocious MCs, town of T-Rex, giants in every ways, rap flows for every day. We knew we would get a reward with a price to pay. The basic training was beyond entertaining, just a cadence of verbal expression, self-explaining. So those are my early days of traveling to the Bronx, but they had this mass of ferocious MCs, and everyone was so lyrically good that it only made us sharpen our sword. Nowadays, it's not like that. I mean, I hear stuff you hear.
So they're not as literate?
No.
That's what you're saying?
At all.
Do they still have ideas, they just don't know how to express it? Or
I think many imaginations are sterile at the time.
Why?
Because you're not producing anything new. Like
they don't have a muse.
It's the same thing.
The universe is talking to you, and you're responding.
Yes.
They've got nothing talking to them.
They just they don't hear. You know, when your parents say, "You're not listening to me," you know they're speaking. You hear the sound. You feel the vibration, but it's not resonating.
That doesn't get in there.
No.
So the universe is talking to you every day.
Of course.
Now,
not only the universe, the earth, people, planets, objects, beings. I'm inspired by all. You know, I once said, in a lecture when I was speaking about inspiration, I can be inspired by the spider because his web is 50 times or 20 times stronger than steel. So that's amazing in itself, and I'm inspired by that. And I can write.
So you have to know enough about the spider's web to even be inspired by it.
Yes. But you have to be willing to learn.
You got to be curious. Right.
You know?
Right. So there's a whole community of rappers who've lost their sources of creativity. That's got to be it.
Yeah. And everyone is following. The majority is following. If it's 100, 99 follow. Only one raps in his own voice. So everyone is following, so it's the same thing over and over.
So we got to spread this.
And it's not really the story you're telling, it's how you tell the story. It's how you tell the story. You know? I think being in a club can be interesting, depending on what you're talking about.
Your art. And if the art is only about violence, I don't know, what do I reach for?
You reach for the peace. You reach for the music without the violence. And like I said, I don't think it's just the whole thing about violence. It's just the way you're talking or telling your story. Because most rappers have this thing where they're from the streets and they're telling their story, and this is how I grew up, and everything I say is real, and I'm not a fake drug dealer. I actually sold drugs, and this is what I'm giving you. But it's the same story. It's like watching the same movie over and over and over and over and over. You don't want to see it anymore. You don't want to hear it.
Story's been told.
Story's been told. In that way.
In that way. Because you've spoken of violence in your songs, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And what does that do? What role does that play?
It's just part of the story. It's just part of the story to get your point across. But it's not violence in a way where, it's gory, or I got to speak about, the screwdriver pulling your brains out and landing all on the back seat. It would probably be done in a way where you don't see the screwdriver. You don't see the brains. You just see blood coming through the door and hit.
Very Hitchcock.
Draw your own imagination.
Hitchcock forces you to fill in the blanks. Shows you the edges of the violence.
That's how it should be.